Making sure maintenance shops meet OSHA requirements is one of the many things Jeremy Wharton and his team do, and he says shop size is one of the biggest problems.
Some of the high points to look at whenever you're looking at the shop. One of the things with shops, they seem to always be built for a specific size, and they've already outgrown it before they've even put the first piece of equipment in there. You know, and a lot of that's budgetary concerns and everything else. So one of the things is storage. You end up putting equipment on top of equipment, and you can't get out of buildings. Exits are messed up. Your means of egress, maybe your fire protection is being blocked. Electrical panels being blocked. Signage is huge. Anytime you're talking about signage, whether it be in the shop or anywhere in the facility, you want to treat signage as if you showed up to a property and no one was there to escort you around, you would know all of the places where you should or should not be, and all of the things that you should be having on if you are in those areas without the assistance of a person actually being there next to you.
Jeremy says the list of problem areas goes on, and many of them are easily avoided.
Some of the other things to look at: emergency lighting, fire protection, making sure fire extinguishers are in compliance. You know, a lot of people, we go and see them and they've got a service that comes and checks their fire extinguishers. But we've gone right behind those services before and found numerous extinguishers that were charged, but were never recharged, you know, for the new year. So there's a lot of things like that.
Proper bookkeeping is important too, especially when needed for reference in emergency situations.
MSDS books or sheets, of course now it's changed to just safety data sheets. A lot of times you'll have folks come in and they'll have just telephone books full of probably every chemical they ever had for the past 20 or 30 years. That's not what should be in those books. Those books should be a working book. It should be exactly what is on property right now, today. Nothing more, nothing less. They don't want you to have to go through 3 or 4 volumes of books to figure out, what do I need to do to take care of my coworker who has just gotten something on them.
On a similar note, Jeremy says that things that could be flammable need to be stored properly too.
Flammable storage cabinets, that's a big one. You know, shops, just about everything that's in a shop that's a liquid, it seems like, or even an aerosol, is flammable for the most part. That's another storage issue. Flammable cabinets are not cheap. And a lot of times, because of the need for all of the different solvents and lubricants and things like that, they've outgrown their fire cabinet before they've even gotten started. So again, making sure that everything that has a flammable warning label on it is in fact in a fire cabinet and the cabinet is closed. The maintenance folks can have what they're using at that moment out and use those different products, but anything else that's a surplus needs to be in those cabinets.
Speaking of things that are flammable, Jeremy says that electrical issues can be a cause for concern too, especially in older shops.
Electrical issues oftentimes are one of the things we find a lot in shops. And again, it goes back to the date of when the shop was built. You know, oftentimes in clubs, the shop's the last place to get renovated, if at all. And so you have electrical that's been in place since the 50s and the 60s a lot of times. And you know, codes are different, things change, things wear out. And as they're being used, they wear out. So again, making sure that the maintenance is done to those parts, they're done correctly, they're done the right way, and they're done not just putting a Band-Aid on something, but they're actually done completely so that someone doesn't get hurt. We found a lot of electrical issues throughout shops, especially older ones that have those limitations.
Also not to forget proper storage of cylinders around the shop.
Air cylinders, compressed gas cylinders, you know, in their storage. One of the other big things that we find is lockout tagout. It seems like every shop now probably has a lockout tagout cabinet, and they probably have tags and they probably have locks, but we find a lot of times that very few shops actually use their lockout tagout program. And so again, this just goes back to a cost savings. It doesn't cost you anything to implement the program. Taking the keys out, putting them in a box to lock it up, putting a lock or some sort of a tag on the piece of equipment to say, yes, it's being worked on, don't operate it, don't drive it. That shouldn't cost a thing, but it's just changing a procedure, changing a mindset of how things are going to be done.
Last but certainly not least, Jeremy says that overhead storage and hoists need to be used properly.
Overhead storage is another big issue. A lot of times storage is limited, and so you try to take advantage of every square inch and every square foot of what you have. Unfortunately, you can't just start stacking things on top of different areas just because it'll fit. It has to be engineered to make sure that that's how many pounds per square foot that it can be handled. So if you have an engineer's letter that says, yes, in fact, that's been engineered to hold that amount of weight, there's no problem with that. but that needs to be the case. Overhead hoists the same way. We've seen overhead hoists attached to all sorts of different things. Again, it needs to be engineered as such. It needs to be proven through an engineer to say, yes, in fact, that is made for that, and it in fact will hold the weight and withstand the pressure that's going to be put on it. And it's not going to pull the building down whenever you're hoisting heavy equipment in the air.